Um, would anybody like to just throw us, get us started here? What, before we sort of go to our extensive program of me, Bill, and Todd, who isn't here yet. Let's just keep it casual. Here we are. There's 23 of us. We can just open up and just, hey, everybody, how was it? How's that for a start? How was it? How'd you go? Jump in.
Okay, well, one question I want to ask. I want to find out everybody else's experience on this, because it's been driving me crazy, and for 13 weeks, I've been trying to get an answer from my students. And this is about turning on cameras. And not only turning them on, but I'll like focusing them on your face, not like shooting it up at the ceiling. I can now recognize my students by their hairstyles, because that's all I see a lot of the time, or not even turning them on. And my experience, I unfortunately was not using Zoom, but rather using Microsoft Teams. So until recently, I've only been able to see like 6 or 9 students at a time. But in the last couple of weeks, I could see all of them. But they still refuse, even in small groups. When I visited the groups, there's like 4 of them, and it's just the little circles. You know, they just refuse to turn on it. And these are the students that are taking selfies every 2 minutes. Now, suddenly you're afraid to show your face. Does anybody know why they refuse to turn on their cameras?
No control over the situation, no filters to put their images through. It's unedited, that's why.
And I find this more prevalent on the 2nd and 3rd year students. I have 5 first-year classes, and most of the first-year students seem to comply because they haven't gotten to the 2nd year. Next year, that'll be a different story. But the first-year students generally have been quite good about that. But I've heard from some students that some are shy, camera shy. Several of the female students have said, well, I don't have my makeup on. And, so there's a sort of a self-consciousness about, because they're at home, it's a first period class, and they just got out of bed and turned on the camera, so they don't want to show their faces. This is my experience.
If I can contribute, I think that there's also what I'm seeing in, there has to be sort of a critical mass in the class of students who are willing to turn on the cameras. And if there's like a good number of students who are willing to do it, then it's sort of, that sort of pressure, it says, okay, all right, then everybody's gonna do it. But yeah, I had to finally, instead of just, make myself crazy with it, I just had to accept that I was using Zoom. So when we were on the main page, it's like, fine, have your cameras off. I don't care. I mean, it's disconcerting to me to look at this wall of black, but oh, well, this is, what we have to manage. But every time, but I had to say it every single time. We're going to go into breakout rooms now. Remember, let's turn on our cameras because, visual communication, blah, 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 facial expressions. And then, when I'm hopping into the breakout rooms, I would just have to say, oh, gee, nobody's got their camera on in here. Come on, guys, let's go. 3, 2, 1, on, and it was, I got tired of being a cheerleader, but there was just something, but I think we could probably understand it too. Like, we're here just like, aren't you constantly checking like, oh gosh, what does my hair look like? Oh, my glasses look funny or whatever. We're constantly looking at ourselves. It's like sitting, in front of a mirror, because they can see themselves, and that maybe that's, disconcerting for them.
Yeah, I don't have that problem.
Yeah, I'm there too. I'm just worried about the light shining off my head and burning out my camera. I've been gathering like a little post course survey, and a few of responses have come in, and I specifically asked this question because they've been driving me crazy. But I mean, first of all, I agree with Michael that first year students are usually not a problem. And the critical mass issue also comes up because some of the student responses so far have been, one, if the teacher, I turn it on when the teacher tells me to do it. Okay, now that one I suspect because I tell them to turn on the cameras every class. It's always part of the spiel. So, well, you should always be turning it on. Others though, yeah, if other students are turning it on, then I will turn it on, right? And the other response too was, it's like a reflection, and I'm looking at myself, and I don't really like what I see, sort of thing. It's like, okay, I think you're in that one. Maybe the issues are beyond language class and beyond university, but yeah, these are sort of answers that have been starting to come in to this question. I was just wondering if anybody else had other experiences with this, because I've went on a big, right at the beginning, I explained to them about how turning it on is going to relieve the stress of online learning. A lot of the research coming back from North America has been saying the same sort of thing, like Zoom fatigue. And we're missing those clues, the whole body clues that make these meetings stressful. So staring just at a dot is really hard. But yeah, some second and third year students, yeah, don't want to do it a lot. First year students will, well, they're first year students. They basically do everything you tell them. And then in second and third year, yeah, they learn that they don't have to. But yeah, it's a hard slog to get them. Some students are not going to turn it on no matter what.
And one way I've mitigated that is I always play music at the beginning. That's on my YouTube videos. I start the class about 10 minutes early, and I play about 3 songs. And then I tell them all to turn on their cameras, and I take attendance. And I take attendance for 2 reasons. One, to get the cameras on, and also as a check, a sound check and a video check that all the systems are working. And once they all have their cameras on, then they tend to keep them on. Some with weaker systems, they turn it off. But that's one way I've been able to mitigate it at the start of the class. With those 2 strategies.
Can I? Good morning, by the way. Relating to schoolwork, I know most of you guys at university. I'm an Kiowa owner, but actually I want to talk about something to do with just prior to junior high. I had an international school where they went online from March through to June. Yeah, a lot of, in fact, I think I could probably say when I was watching my son's class, all of the kids had their cameras off. I don't know, maybe I would just be a bit more of a bull in the china shop, but I would simply say personally, and the teachers didn't, but I would say, well, you know, your cameras are on, or otherwise you don't take part in the lesson. What sort of I mean, you can accommodate these people as much as you like, but they're going to have to grow up and live in the real world at some point. You know, and also I know from doing Zoom lessons with my Kiowa that kids who are, I'll give you an example. You know damn well what they're doing is they're playing games while they're actually talking to you. You know they're doing it. There's no, you know, they maybe they don't, maybe they do, I don't know. But it's that unsaid thing sort of thing, you know. And I had to once or twice with an 11-year-old. I mean, we're talking quite different to your sort of people. But I had to say, yeah, Tatsuhiro, are you sure you're concentrating? And I know he's playing games because he does for 2 or 3 hours. We survey students outside of the class and we say, what are your normal weekly habits for whatever you do, games and that sort of thing. And this guy's playing 3 hours a day, and I can just tell that what he's doing is that when he should be just doing basic phonics, and we're talking something really simple But going back to the international school, yeah, all the kids were camera off, and well, yeah, okay, they're paying, but I really think as a teacher, I would have had a different approach, and that's camera on, or even you get switched off. I don't know. Is that too hard? This is the international Fukuoka International School, by the way, Christy.
Can I jump in? I seem to have avoided this problem completely by accident. For my interactive class, it's called Interactive English, and it's a first year class. And for the first 3 weeks, it was mainly sort of me instructing, and I used YouTube. I made YouTube videos mainly, and then had like a 30-minute Zoom thing at the end. So, you know, they would start on time, they'd watch my video, check some stuff out on Quizlet or what have you, and then there'd be a 30-minute WebEx lesson from half an hour till the end. And during that, I mean, that was the camera thing off. That was the first couple of weeks. I wasn't really prepared either way. I didn't really know what it was going to be. But from my week 5, it was my course material sort of changes up, my textbook. And so it was going to be more interactive. And I made my introductory video for that week was, right, here's how we do it. We're going to have cameras on, we're going to have microphones on and ready to speak. That's the deal. Either that or you go and do the boring Google quiz homework. And it was just, I just said that because that's kind of what I wanted. So I said it very clearly, and it never failed. Never. I never had a problem with cameras off. And that wasn't like me reacting. So I think I got in it in advance. Yeah. If you're trying to chase that back after you've lost that, you know, and sort of trying to claw it back. But I got there in advance, as I said, just by accident. I go, here's the deal. Here's what we're going to do, because from now we're going to be interacting more, right? It's not going to be me just sort of checking your stuff. So we're going to have cameras on, microphones on, and ready to respond to my questions, because I'm going to ask you questions, and I did. And the other thing that sort of fed into that was my textbook. I've got these sort of discussion questions, just sort of, you know, discussion prompts like you get in many textbooks. And the way I kind of figured to make that fly was, right, I'm going to ask somebody, I'll ask, you know, the person in the middle of my screen, you get the first question, right? So give us your answer, and then you ask the next question to somebody else. Choose a name and just ask, right? Just from the participants list, choose a name and ask the next question. You can choose whatever question. And I ended up calling this sort of bouncing around the room. All right, let's just bounce for 10 minutes here. And it just worked. And then after that was going smoothly for weeks, literally weeks, you know, I started hearing from other teachers about the camera off problem. And I kind of dodged a bullet on that just by being extremely clear. It's like, that is the deal. Now, one more thing, I don't want to hog it, but there was a week, it was one class, it was law. Hogakubu tended to be stubborn in my experience, but the cameras just weren't coming on for one of my instruction lessons, like that the last 30 minutes when they're meant to have their cameras on, and just sort of so I can gauge their understanding of the video that I'd made. And the cameras weren't coming on, and there was literally like, I just was not, maybe I just wasn't in the mood for it, but I was not going to talk to a bunch of squares. And I went, all right, everybody, well, if cameras aren't coming on, then there's really nothing we can do. I guess, you know, we'll see you next week. You know, I can't do this. If you're not going to turn the cameras on, then and I wasn't bluffing, and I wasn't angry, and I wasn't playing chicken. It was just, honestly, like, I can't gauge your understanding if it's just, all right, so look, you know, this is 5 minutes into the lesson, literally. And all I've said basically is, yeah, hello, how's the video? Was it good? Did you understand? Get your cameras on. Come on, let's see your cameras. Nothing. And so I said, all right, well, 5 minutes in, we'll call it a day for now, and see you next week. And suddenly, bang, 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 they all came on. Yeah. And it was just that chicken thing. It's that critical mass and playing chicken, and just being extremely clear about that. So my advice, if I'm in a position to give advice, would be, you know, week 1, the rules are attendance equals your camera is on. Simple as that. And I mean, they're all terrified of attendance scores, right? So that would be, and that will be.
We weren't allowed to do that. To require cameras on. No. My university said
it would depend on that.
Why was that?
Privacy. You can't require a student to turn the camera on.
But they have to come to college and show their face, right?
Yeah, but the university was super concerned about that, so we were not allowed to. And also, they, you know, this quiet rule that, you know, if students for technology reasons, maybe they don't have Wi-Fi, they don't have a device, whatever, that they can't take part in the live sessions, that we had to give consideration and not penalize them for attendance and that sort of thing. Yeah. So
are there visual games or something really simple you can start to get the mood moving? Like, here's my pen. I'll pass my pen to, I don't know, Steve, can you see it? I'll pass my pen to you. Here you go.
Oh, hang on.
There you go. You've got a pen? Where's your pen? Where's your pen? Come on. I'll tell you what, I'll take it back.
I've got you on my phone down there, and I'm looking up here at everybody. So.
All right, okay.
But everybody's screen is different, though, so.
Yeah.
Right, okay. I'm looking at the main screen in the middle. So, I mean, here's my pen. I'll pass it to the next person. But, okay, yeah, maybe you can just pass it left or something like that. I don't know. Maybe you can have some sort of game or something really juvenile, something like that. And we threw an egg around the room in a young kids Kaiwa class. I don't know whether it appeals to older kids, but I got an imaginary egg, and I'm throwing it. I'm naming somebody, and I'm throwing it to the person, and they're catching it. Yeah, totally juvenile, but you know, something more appropriate maybe, or maybe just that.
That's fun.
Yeah, it gets things started anyway. Is the point I'm making? And then if you've got people relaxed and in some sort of jovial mood, they may well be more at ease to do whatever you want.
Yeah, there's I guess on YouTube now there's a lot of videos like that. And most students have seen that kind of I don't know if it's TikTok or whatever how they do it, but it's it's a nice way to get them involved and looking at the screen differently than just all these videos of people's faces.
Yeah.
One thing one student said to me was that it was the first time that she could see everybody's face, because in a conventional classroom they're all looking at the teacher. I hadn't recognized that because I was part of the classroom, so it was normal. But that wasn't a criticism. It was just the kind of like, wow, you know, I've never seen a class like this before.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard from several students that my class was the only class in the week where they had cameras on and they saw other people's faces. That's staggering, but that's where it is.
Yeah, it's true actually. All to one each to each other.
Anybody else want to follow up on this topic about cameras on or off? Anyone else got anything to say? And we might change it up. All right, doesn't look like it. Look there, I think there's 30 of us here now. It might be time to use the hands up rule. I just want to make sure everybody gets a say, and I don't want to miss things. Now, someone's going to have to remind me, because now I'm a WebEx native. I've forgotten. But can somebody, Bill, or somebody who knows WebEx, Zoom? How do we do the hand up thing in the participants list?
Well, I can't see it because I'm a co-host. But if you click on the bottom for participants, and you click on the bottom for chat, on the right-hand side, you'll see participants at the top and chat at the bottom. And in the middle should be a hands up.
Reactions.
Icon.
Called reactions.
Oh.
So,
no, that's not what I'm talking about. Reactions is clapping or
thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah.
Participants, and under the names on my side, it's on the right-hand side. At the very bottom, you've got three options. Invite, middle is mute me, and the third one is raise hand.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So when the hand goes up, then in the host view, the person who put their hand up goes to the top of the list.
Right.
And they're going to be in
they're
going to be in order of the people who have put their hands up.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, good. I think that might be just a good idea to get everybody's say and in order and everything. All right. That's cool. That was good. That was a good topic. Shall we perhaps go on to our sort of programmed? Todd's arrived. Hey, Todd, you were one of the very few who volunteered to have something to organize to say. So, are you good to take the floor, Todd?
I could, yeah. I could. Can I get like just 5 minutes? I'm really sorry. I slipped. Right. I lost track of time. Just 5 minutes, and I would be ready to go.
Yeah, sure. Well, Bill, you had something. You put some on the list.
All right. So I had something really, really simple. Just when I'm like talking to the students, what I'm doing, I should preface with, is live Zoom classes and also Google Classroom. So Google Classroom is where we put the link to Zoom and all of our assignments and all of our quizzes and everything through Google Classroom. So what I found myself often doing was saying to students, okay, so here's your quiz activity, please do this. And then I would forget that they were looking at that, and then I'd start to like click and see who turned it in, and then realize, or I'd go to Facebook and I'd like, realize, oh, that's not helping me. That's not helping me, right? So what I ended up doing was I would just take a screenshot and then go over to the screenshot, and then on the screenshot I would say, like, just write on it, right? Like, do this quiz activity. We'll come back to Zoom, the mom to Zoom at, and whatever time, 10:35 or 10:36. So, and just leaving that as the screen share, and then turning off my camera. So I could make a coffee, I could do whatever. Anyone who came in late would still see this on their screen. And anyone who, like, sometimes the office would drop in, and if they just see nothing happening, well, this explains what's going on. And students who were away when I gave the instructions and they wander back will see that this is what's happening. Then they'll go in, that they know what to do. So I thought that was a really simple way to just keep everybody on the right track.
Question about that. You said the office would drop in on your classes?
Yeah, especially in the beginning. We had our university trained our office staff to be troubleshooters for the students. And if any student was having any sort of issue, like I can't hear the teacher or whatever, they would contact the office. Then the office would drop in, and if the office could hear us, they'd tell the student, no, that's on you, you have an issue. But if the teacher was just like going, with no mic, they would call the teacher and say, hey, your mic's off.
I see. So they sort of behaved as moderators or whatever. That's handy.
Yeah, they weren't checking up on us, no.
Yeah.
But they would come in if a student had an issue. So what I'm saying is, if a student came back and like nothing was happening, and they're like, the teacher's not talking, and I don't know what's going on, they would call the office and say, I don't know what's going on. And then the office would come and say, well, if they saw what I just showed you, they'd say, well, can't you see that? The teacher wrote a message to you. Do that, right? So that was just my simple way of doing it, and telling the students what time we'd be back by, give them a chance to take a break if they finished early.
So Bill, where did you put that screenshot? Because presumably you're using Zoom.
Right.
I'm just getting the technology around my head. If I was going to do that, I would put it on a Keynote slide and then click play in window and then share that window. How did you do it? How'd you get that thing in front of their eyes?
Well, I took the screenshot with software called Skitch. And Skitch used to be awesome. It was purchased by Evernote. They turned it into a piece of crap. Then it got a little better, as things do. So I just take the screenshot, and then I share the screenshot with the students.
Yeah, but how did you share that? That's the step. How did you share it?
But click screen share and then go to Sketch and
Oh,
click
right.
share.
So you've got that in a Sketch window. You've got that in
Yeah.
a Sketch window, and then you're sharing that window.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Same. Okay.
Sorry, may I ask a question? So in principle, you were conducting your classes within the set period. So if it's second period, whatever, and you would be on Zoom for those 90 minutes.
I think we had to be on Zoom for at least 60 and end with an activity that should take them a little bit more time.
You had to, meaning that was your school's,
Yeah, in
objective?
principle, 90 minutes of work. And
Interesting.
I just thought that anything over 60 might be a bit long, but for my first year students that I saw twice a week, we often went almost 90 because they had a lot more breakout sessions, a lot more talking together.
Yeah, that's interesting because our university was just like, we don't know what to do. In principle, the students should be doing 90 minutes, of whatever, but it doesn't have to be, at the set time. Teachers were free to choose on demand or real time or whatever. And so I kind of went myself with a hybrid approach, which, partway through the semester, I conducted a survey and I got good feedback from the students about, because some of their professors were going Zoom for the full 90 and they were just dying. They're just like, I can't sit there that long, and so what I would do, we were using Microsoft Teams, but I didn't use Teams video. I used Zoom because of the breakout rooms. And I would give them, I didn't have this figured out from the get-go, but it sort of settled out in the first few weeks. I would give them about 40 minutes of work in the textbook, and I would prepare like a Microsoft Team or Microsoft form, and they would just have to respond. So that was my check to know that they were doing the prep work. And that had to be submitted, and then make sure you have this done, and then we'll start the Zoom. And it was usually like 40 minutes into the class period. So it was still in that class time, but then we would be live for just half the class. And then they would have homework activities to follow up. So that's how I structured things. It's really quite interesting to hear how you managed. If anybody else wants to share what they were doing, that'd be great.
Yeah. Christy, can I ask about that? You said you had the Google form, like homework, or they have to submit answers, and that opened at class time and closed 40 minutes later. Like, was that required to do it in class time?
Yeah, they were supposed to. What I tended to do was I would post it the night before, because I know, like, for some of my first period classes, the kids are not going to want to, wake up at 9 o'clock and start doing that. So I opened it the night before, and they had until the beginning of class. If some people couldn't get it done, I was pretty lenient with submission times. I actually let it go beyond. But the kids were actually quite good about getting it done in time, and then, reliably enough that I could use whatever it was they had gone through in the textbook in the interactive time.
Ooh. Hang on, Rob, you got your hand up.
Yeah, basically what I discovered was we were in the same boat. Nobody knew what to do. Again, we were using Teams. I didn't use Zoom at all, and got around the breakout rooms by, it should be coming later, but at the time, setting up student groups in their channel in the Teams. So when we started the class, they go to the team, they find the channel, they just join our class meeting, and then they have their own groups where they can join. So they're bouncing back and forth from their group to the main class. And I would just talk a little bit, give them something to do, send them off to their groups, say, come back in 15 minutes. They come back, go over the answers or whatever they had to do. And by breaking up the class and not really having it like 50 minutes of talking, it was just basically almost like a normal classroom. I talk a bit, I show them some stuff on a PowerPoint, they go off in their groups and come back. And the students got really good at going back and forth. And the end of the, and I was able to drop in on their groups during the class. And like 90% of the time, they were on task and talking a lot. And most of the students did have their cameras on, just as some groups did not. But I think a way to approach these 90-minute classes, you can do 90 minutes of class, but it really needs to be broken up into 10 to 10, 15, 20-minute sections. And if you do let students have their chat or their task and
Something happened. Rob, we lost your sound there.
What's this connection?
I think, Rob, you muted yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I muted myself. Yeah.
Too many gestures.
Yeah, this has actually happened in class before as well, where I've muted myself and I get messages in the chat, we can't hear you. But students wait 5 minutes before telling me that they can't hear me. So, yeah, so I think the structure is something that's really, or not even, you don't have to have a formalized structure, but breaking students out and letting them have a chance to work in their casual groups. And I always give them a lot of extra time to do whatever they have to do. And they get, especially for the first year students who didn't know anybody, they appreciated having that time to just finish what they had to do and then interact with each other and screw around a bit.
Catherine, you got a hand up.
So I was going to say, I think I did it similar to Rob. I'm a Hijokin at several different places, and I guess my option was to teach a 90-minute. I didn't really have a hybrid option. And so since I teach communication, I didn't see how I was going to do a communication class asynchronously, although some people tried. I didn't. So I had 90 minutes of Zoom, and I think I had, first year students, and they were in breakout rooms the majority of my class. We would have a task they're on. Thanks to Todd's wonderful tutorial, I made heavy use of Nearpod so I could know what they were seeing on their screens. I could push slides and information out to them. And then mine didn't have set groups. We would do things and come back to the main session and have a bit of discussion. And then I would shuffle the groups up. And maybe it was because they were first year students and just I had 100% cameras on at all times. And in fact, I increased the breakout rooms because of feedback from them. I had them submit a Flipgrid video at the end as their response card indicating, what they learned, what they were having trouble with, and they requested more breakout room time. And that's when I realized, okay, yes. And so part of it, after they finished their task, they were probably chatting and getting to know each other, but that definitely helped their willingness and ability to communicate with each other in English, as they felt very connected. And I would know, because sometimes if someone had a tech issue and was like dropping off, I could see the person was like, Sensei, Shokun is like having issues. They're like on the phone with him in the group. And I said, okay, so tell him, shut down the computer, restart, that he should be able to rejoin our Zoom. And they're like relaying the information. So they were all very interconnected with each other, I think, because of this. So.
while I hand across. I read, I think on the OTJ group on Facebook, people saying first 2 minutes of the class is just throw them randomly into breakout rooms of 3 or 4. Just speak Japanese, go, and we'll be back in 2 minutes. And people apparently really like that. I didn't have the chance to do that because I wasn't using WebEx, but apparently students sort of got to meet each other that way. Onwards, handing across to Paul.
Yes, I wanted to ask Rob how many groups he had at a time and about how much time he would spend monitoring each group in passing.
Oh, so my biggest group was a writing class where students were in a peer journal groups of 3 students. So that ended up with 7 groups. So I would create the 7 groups. I could only simultaneously be in 4 groups at one time. So I would have to like hang up and it was just a matter of cycling through, using it in, well, now it's set up where I get a menu off to the side where I can just bounce in and out. Yeah, and just go through them. The key though, when setting up these meetings is labeling them so you can find them. It took me a while to figure out how to label them, but it worked. It really worked well. I recorded all of my classes and all my group activities, just sort of to keep students on track, but also that I could go back and review what the students did if I couldn't go in and see any problems or issues that came up in the activities to be able to give class feedback. But also too, I think this helps students stay on task because they knew I was recording them. Although sometimes I didn't monitor that much. I need a break. And the activities ranged anywhere from, go off for 5 minutes, do this, to they had 30 minutes to do several different sort of things, and then submit answers into a form. And that was one way to do it, or answering in the chat. So again, I tried different ways of just getting students feedback and making sure they actually did perform a task. The forms work really well because then when you come back, if you use the summary of student answers, and then they can all sort of see how their answers compare to other students. If you set it up as a quiz or even as a form, where you can see those summaries, very much like Google Forms.
Thank you for sharing those ideas. Yeah, I have taken my classes and split them into subgroups of 2 and run them each for about 40 minutes. And that gave me time to circulate through the breakout groups and see everyone on task or not on task, as the case may be. I often as not went to rooms and found students with their cameras and their microphones off and little or no chat going on.
Joe.
Hey, sorry I'm late. Our campus got closed down for a couple of days because a student had COVID, but fortunately they didn't come to school, but they were just kind of worried. So my office getting everything restarted 3 days out of the office. I wanted to ask Rob how he recorded everything. How many hard drives did you have? What was that a problem? I'm just kind of curious. I didn't record anything because I was just really afraid that I was going to overload a computer or several computers. So I'm just kind of curious where you stored everything.
This is Microsoft Teams. So everything just goes to, it's called, it's basically Microsoft's YouTube, which is called Stream. So after I hang up from a meeting, it just automatically records, goes up. I get a message. It's, your video is now in Streams. So that wasn't an issue because of that the platform. It just all got. I did have to go in though, and I would just. Again, for privacy issues, and I just mentioned, I told students at the beginning, look, I will be recording everything. And the reason for this is so that I'm just, again, I'm recording the whole class because I don't remember what we do. And they're used to that because I'm constantly asking, do you guys, did we do section 4 in the textbook? So they were familiar with that. But also I mentioned to them that the reason that I was recording was that because I can't visit all the groups, so I need to see where you guys are having problems, and then I can address it in class. So they were aware that it was being recorded, and I think it was just like, and I also mentioned, it's like, you guys, if this was a class, I'd see you all anyways. So it's not any different. And I mentioned to them that nobody else sees this. Only I have access to this. None of this will ever be put up on the web. And after a class, I just have to go into
Can we see
Teams.
it? Can we see it?
Yeah. Okay, sure. After the class, though, I have to go in and just change the permissions and where the streams show up so that it doesn't show up in the student's channel, so that they can't share it. So I have to, only I had access to it. So that was the privacy thing. They were aware, and also in Teams, as soon as they join a meeting that's being recorded, they get the warning, the little bubble they have to dismiss. But I didn't ask for permission. I just went ahead and did it, told them this was what's happening, and they just sort of accepted it, and it never sort of came up.
Sorry, Rob, did you, so with the Microsoft Teams, do you, if you hadn't changed it, they could share it with anyone or just with people in that team?
Well, when I go in and change the permission to where this shows up, then if they have access to it, then they would be able to download it and view it. So they would be able to share it.
Right. Okay.
So I have to just, right after the class, as soon as it's up, I just go in and change. So they just don't even know it's there.
Thanks.
There was a hand up, but it went down. Who had?
Oh,
Michael.
that was
Michael
me.
had. Oh.
Yeah, can we change topics?
Yeah. Oh, I think we can. Yeah.
Okay. I raised the question in the chat there. I had a student at one of the universities in a writing class or presentation class, and I have them do mind maps and then complete the writing assignment. And I had one student, and I have them submit the mind map as proof of concept. And I had a student who did a very simple mind map. He was lower level, and it was at his language level. But then what he submitted to me was just better grammar than I can I write. And he's not using Google Translate. And he was embarrassed when I called him out on it. It was on Zoom, class Zoom. And he wouldn't say what programs he was using. But I know he's an engineer, and I went to an engineering university in Canada, so I know how tech savvy and how geeky they can be on technology. Would that be Grammarly that he'd be using, or does anybody have any experience of other kinds of software to help
People.
Them?
Yeah. Pardon? People, deep learning, translation. It's amazing. I just put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, DeepL. Okay, I've never heard of that before.
Your students have.
Well, I knew that it wasn't Google Translate because it just was too good. And I used to be able to tell students, don't use Google Translate because I can figure it out that it's not yours. But and the only way I caught him is because of his mind map, which was just absolutely, well, it was at his language level. So what he wrote, they just didn't match. So so that's if you're not using mind maps, what I do is I have them sketch it out in their notebook. and all my students have notebooks to make notes. And then they have to photograph it and then send it to me. I use Google Classroom. So just as a proof of concept that it matches what they're writing. But thanks, Bill. That's Deeple. Got it. Has anyone else had this experience? Yep.
I think I unmuted myself. Okay. Yeah, I just typed in that I had that with a class, and I'm sure probably with more than one class. I'm just trying to figure out ways to, get them to actually write something in English, at least a bit. And I think I'm just going to have them do live writing in class, like doing it on Google Doc or something like that. But I haven't figured out exactly how I'll do that. Yeah.
So I have this my B5 notebook, and I do timed writing as one of the opening exercises I do in all my classes to get them to actually be writing, and then I have them submit 2 or 3 of them at the end of the semester as a kind of a rough check. I used to do that when I was face-to-face, but so I could see them writing. But that's one way of doing it. Also, as I said, I have them in the notebook write out the rough draft, the mind map and the notes and stuff like that. So all their pre-writing tasks are done in the notebooks, and then have them photograph that, and then send me that as the proof of their work. And that's kind of a duct tape binder twine kind of approach, but it seems to work.
For the sake of online learning, though, you must be doing that kind of live. Like you've got to do your notes, take a photo, and it has to arrive in my inbox in the next 2 minutes, sort of thing. Like, how are you doing that remotely?
Well, I use a Google Classroom, so I used to open up an assignment task in there, and then they just drop it in there.
Right. So that you're on Zoom at the same time.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily have to do it, in class if they're still working on it. It'll be if we're running out of time, it's a task that they have to complete, and they know how to send it to me. So we do the mind map and sort of prep 1 week, and then do the writing the next week.
Andrew, Andrew's had a hand up for a while. Andrew, do you want to jump in? Yeah, you're muted, Andrew. You got to unmute yourself. No, Andrew, we can't hear you, Andrew. You're mute on. Andrew, you're muted. Yeah, okay. It is. Okay.
Yeah, I've got a comment both for Michael and Robert. As far as Michael's concerned, I like the idea of just having like a timed free write. As a lot of students just need to get that fluency going. But, the other thing is that you want to work on, the accuracy as well. So you're doing the mind map 1 week, you're doing the free write another week. As far as making sure that it's their original writing and, they're actually not going into doing it on any software. Well, they are doing it on software, but one software that I've really liked is called writeandimprove.com. And what it is, it's guided feedback. So it kind of like, it gives colored highlights to the feedback, and then students can think through their own errors. And then what they can do is they can do corrections made on the guided feedback. That's something that Michael might want to experiment with there.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
And the other comment was for Robert, regarding this idea of videotaping and putting on the streaming there. I think it's a great idea, but I think a lot of students kind of like have a psychological fear of being videotaped. The whole idea that, I think this whole idea of privacy, privacy, privacy has been so driven into people's heads, and you know, that, oh, something's going to be leaked, somebody's going to see me. How much do you think that this would just be pure psychological fear of you know, them, you know, being seen in public or having their faces being seen or something like that, Robert?
Basically, I think they just don't even think about it. After, it may be an issue in the first little while, but I don't think they even think about it anymore. They, they're in the class.
Okay.
You know, yeah, there were some students that I never saw. Our university eventually went, we went in person for, well, which lasted like 1 week, and then a case was discovered, so we were shut down again. But I think there's going to be the few students that it doesn't matter what you do, they're just not going to interact or be online. I think it really just was a forgotten issue. They just even notice it. This is just what happened, and that's the way we did the class.
Okay, great, thank you.
And Andrew, I think most students are like doing selfies and, you know, showing off with the camera. So I think this is become maybe less and less of an issue as they're more familiar and comfortable with showing themselves on various media.
Hey, yeah, my daughter on Instagram. I got you. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Michael.
Thanks.
Joe, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was, I didn't realize, I'd seen DeepL a while ago. I didn't realize it'd gotten so much better. I thought my writing classes went really well this year, so now I'm going to have to go back and check to see if they use DeepL or not. But yeah, mine went really well, though I think writing can lend itself pretty well to a asynchronous approach. And I treated the whole term as ERT, and I didn't try to, we had classes, but I said, look, if you can't make it, don't make it, but just make sure you get your essay in. And yeah, it worked pretty well. I just had a few students who I had to kind of browbeat. I do music videos. They give them a music video and ask them to write about it. And then I used to, in class, I was giving them the information for the first paragraph that they would then write. And initially they would just basically take the information that I gave them and kind of do it in order. And then I'd say, well, I've given you this information, you need to organize it yourself. This next term, I'm going to try and give them the information with gaps. So they have to actually look it up on the internet. So I'm kind of working on that now, but yeah, I'm kind of curious if people found that writing worked out better than speaking, or if a particular skill lent itself to asynchronous or to online learning better than the other skills.
Anyone?
I have a reading class. I use Reading Explorer, and they got a lot of pre-made quizzes and materials that really lends itself to online learning. I make up the quizzes on, reproduce the quizzes on Google Classroom in the forums, and give the students 5-10 minutes. It's like a five-minute quiz every week. We do a unit a week. And then, this is at the Canada University. They're still deciding whether to go online or back to classroom. And I think I can petition to stay online, because for a reading class, well, they've done the reading before, and I do the quiz at the beginning of class. So if they haven't done the reading, they squelch the quiz. And I don't really see any reason to go there. So I think reading classes really fit well with this.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on what classes are good for asynchronous, which are good for synchronous?
I've got a reading class, 2 reading classes, and they're going quite well online. I think they're going better than the speaking classes because they're more inclined to read the summaries that I'm required to produce after every meeting. So the summaries and follow-ups make much more reading for everyone, and the people in the speaking classes don't seem to pay a great deal of attention to those.
Yeah. I do an ESP. Well, I shouldn't say. I do a TOEIC class, and for that one, I mean, that's a sort of class that when it's in the classroom, let's just say that not 100% of the students are paying attention very well, right? It's one of those classes, and so I decided very early, okay, for that class, I'm going to make videos, I would take photographs of the textbook, put on my iPad, scribble on the iPad. I would make screen capture videos, put them up on YouTube of me basically going through the textbook much the same as I would in a class and giving them time, pause the video now and do these questions and we'll come back and explain the answers. And for those students who are interested and who are going to do the TOEIC, then they might be interested enough to pay attention like they would in class, and those who are not going to do it either way. But the point of this story is to say that I always had, at class time, I would be in a WebEx room and I call it the help desk. I did it for a couple of classes. I just call it the help desk. So, you're off on your own. You can do it whenever through the week, but I'll be there at that time with any questions. I did that for my TOEIC classes. I did that for my writing class. I did that for one or two other classes. And it is, something that I heard students complaining about is we don't get enough feedback and we don't get enough individual help from teachers. But I'll tell you, do a help desk and see if anyone shows up. They don't, very rarely. But I felt very good about the fact that I was there every time. And it helps at the end of the semester when they start to complain, hey, I didn't know what to do. It's like, yo, you read the Moodle every single week. There was a link to my help desk. You didn't come. That was been there since week 3. And all that kind of thing can help as well. Anyone else want to jump in about Charlie, you got your hand up.
Yeah, so just relating to what you just said about feedback. We finished class last Thursday and I handed out like a evaluation form and I've just been going through them over the weekend. And so what I did was completely different to the other teachers, is basically did classes more or less in the class to begin with, so they were just doing their stuff on their own, but then as we sort of progressed and they got used to what we were doing, I tried to introduce different elements, so like breakout rooms and whatever, and I had the same issues as everyone else with those, so I didn't really think I had anything to add. And then in terms of assignments, because obviously we can't have a test, well, okay, I'm sure somebody's going to pipe up and say that they had a test and it went fine, but personally I don't think in this situation that I'm working and we could have a test where you can't guarantee that they're not going to cheat. So we just did it based on assignments. So they had, it's a conversation class, so they either made videos and uploaded them to a Facebook group, which I opened, obviously slightly controversial. And also they wrote conversation scripts as like a way of kind of, putting their ideas into some kind of output. Anyway, yeah, to summarize all of that stuff I just said, they just wanted more feedback is all they wanted. So every time they did projects, obviously I've got like 100+ students, and every week they were all handing these in. So I'd have 100 videos to watch, or I'd have 100 conversation scripts to read, and they'd arrive on different days. They'd arrive, of various different formats. So we had PDFs, we had, stuff on Word, I had JPEGs, I had some files that were like this big that I couldn't see, so they had to resend them. So I did some general feedback. I'd pick out the main problems and I'd do like a review sheet for them each lesson, and I'd give it to them to look at. But then they wanted more specific feedback, and when you've got 38 students in a single class, you can't go over to them and be like, oh, in your homework, X and X and X and Y and whatever, and if you change this, it'd be better, because you've got 38 students all sat there or not sat there. You can't give them feedback because obviously you don't want other students to hear what's being said. But at the same time, I haven't got time to send 100 emails to 100 different students. So I'll kind of like, if anyone's got any advice for feedback, I'd be really interested to hear it, because that was probably the #1 issue that students, like, if when they said they wanted something changed, that was the #1 thing they wanted changed. So if anybody's got ideas, I'd really, really like to hear how they gave feedback.
I've got one, but Andrew's got the hand up. Andrew, you want to jump in?
Yeah, there's one thing that I haven't done it recently, but I've done it before, is that, you know, I actually get students, you know, I might give a certain limited amount of time, like maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes or something like that. I'll give a task so that they won't know the task until that particular moment. And they might have like 10 minutes to complete the task, but the task will have to be videotaped. And it might be done in, for example, you could do it in like a breakout, but it has to be videotaped. It's sent to another group. And then based on peer evaluation, they give feedback to one another. So in a way, what you're doing you're scaffolding it, because you're getting peer feedback on the student level. And what I was using, it was called, I think it was for the TOEFL, and I was using what were called Propel rubrics. And the Propel rubrics are based on the actual rubrics that come from ETS. And each student, one of the first steps was to actually study the Propel rubrics that were based on the ETS rubrics. And then what they would do is they study the rubrics and give feedback on a student level. So it was more peer oriented before they actually got to the teacher, and the teacher would just get anything that wasn't dealt with on the student level, and the students would be marked on how well they did the task for those 10 minutes.
Cochrane Sensei, Rob.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with, if you're Charlie, if you have students writing scripts. I had like a speaking class and also a writing class where we used Pixton. You familiar with Pixton? Pixton.com is it's comic making software. Now you can, as a teacher, they have different payment plans. As the teacher, you can pay like 1,000 yen a month to get some resources, and there's free resources as well. But you create classes, and students then create a comic. And it's just, it shows up in the Pixton app. So that's easy to see. It kind of gets students interested in something other than just writing a script. Also for videos, another app, which is on phones, which also is free for students, and it's called Plotagon. And this has, acceptable text to speech, I guess. It's not very, very good, but they can also record their own voice. So if there's 2 characters, one character can be the computer voice, and then the other is for themselves. Alternatives to, just writing out conversations. Again, some students get into it and they produce really good ones. Others don't want to deal with it at all. But also too, as far as feedback goes, I just want to echo what Andrew was saying is, yeah, get students to give feedback to themselves. You put them in their groups, they talk about it, they cover a lot of the stuff. You can then just address, and the way I normally do it is I rarely give individual feedback. I just look over and give the common feedback that a lot of them are making in writing assignments or speaking assignments. And I'm always available. I have like office time or in the chat. If a student really wants individual feedback, they can come to me. I found this frees up so much of my time than trying to, because let's face it, most students do not look at it at all, right? And so you give this general feedback, what's basically what everybody's doing. And then they also get feedback about what other mistakes students are making. You don't single people out, but there's always just give that option. If they do if they generally like they really want feedback, then make yourself available for a certain amount of time online, and have a meeting. We can talk about it and go over their stuff. And you'll find that very few, if any, students want that feedback.
Yeah, so
they say they want it.
Same thing. I did the same thing. I said to them, I've got, day 1, day 2, day 3, I've got classes, but any other day I'm open. And yeah, they don't, they say they want that. So this feedback, take it with a pinch of salt, I guess, because it's the same thing every time. They say they want something, but then you offer it to them, but you offer it to them when they don't have the class, and then suddenly they don't want it anymore. So
hey, you offer it to them when they do have the class, they don't show up. This is I was chomping at the bit through what Rob was saying, because exactly the same. That's my experience of this help desk thing, because one of my speaking classes became basically a listening comprehension class. And so I would, Google form answers, and I would post their scores and then be available for them to come and ask me, hey, why was my score not at 100% or what have you? And I would tell them, write down your answers first on a bit of paper and then enter them into the Google form so then we can discuss them later. I would tell them this in videos each week. Nobody showed up. They just never showed up.
May I talk about feedback? If anybody's doing presentations, my Zemi students were doing presentations, and I like to ask, I don't always ask all students to give feedback on each presenter, but I want, about 3. So that there are others who are just watching and enjoying the presentation, but then 3 who are on point to give feedback. I provide the rubric, for the peer evaluation. And so I do that when we're face to face. So in the Zoom scenario, I provided that form as a PDF, and they were able to print or whatever. And then I recreated the form in Microsoft Forms, and I just I posted a link so people who are the 3 people who are giving feedback for Mizuki, click here. 3 people who are giving feedback for, Deiko, click here. And so, they were able to just go in and transfer their evaluation and comments. And then I can just share the kind of matomeru, what do you call that? The responses, and the responders become anonymous. So it worked quite well. And then of course they get teacher feedback as well. But if you want to do peer feedback, then you can sort of jig the forms, or like Google Forms or MS Forms to do that.
Michael, you got your hand up.
Yeah, responding to Charlie, I have over 250 students, and so I get jammed. I jammed myself with too many assignments. I just got overwhelmed, and so I had to do kind of triage, especially my writing classes. And so I focused mostly on format and organization, and less on word choice and grammar and that, because it's just too much work to do. And I told my students that if even if you have mistakes in grammar and word choice, if it's organized clearly with your topic sentence and your subpoints and that, then the reader should be able to figure out what you mean. But if they're gonna write in the Kisho Tenketsu style of writing, and there's full of grammar mistakes, no one's going to understand what they're doing. So I had to do just focus on the structure of the writing and worry less about the grammar and vocabulary, and that helped me assess much faster. And if there are any glaring grammar points, then I have done what you've done, is just highlight some of the more common ones and then present that to the class, and that helped cut down the work.
Andrew, you got a hand up again, or is that still from before?
Yeah, no, it's a new hand up. So a couple of things. I guess for one thing for Michael there, and I think also for Charlie, is that reducing the key is to reduce the amount of work that has to be done by the teacher.
Yes.
And I think that anyway that, you know, students do need feedback. So it's kind of like we have a double-edged sword here. One edge of the sword is we have to give feedback. The other edge of the sword is that we have to reduce our workload. And I think that there are other ways. We give the feedback that only a human, only a human who is proficient in the language can give the feedback. Feedback that can be given through other means, you know, it could be given through other means, you know. The idea that, you know, I suggested about writeandimprove.com, where you have the actual like yellow and different colors highlighted. Students can actually work their way through the grammar through self-correction. It's guided self-correction. So that's one way to handle that issue when it comes to writing. Getting back to Charlie's question about the idea of you know, the feedback and the students and things like that. A long time ago, a predecessor to all this COVID and all the stuff that's going on, about 12, 15 years ago, there was a thing called YakPak. And I was actually introduced to this via Robert Chartrand. And YakPak was actually, it was very similar to the idea of getting students into breakouts, and students would actually get into breakouts, and then they would do peer feedback, you know, one with group versus group. Now I'm thinking that, you know, if you're getting students doing individual work, this is one way, you know, we could supplement Zoom with our smartphones, you know, because their smartphones have audio recording capability as well. We can do videotaping with our smartphones. So why don't we get into like having students send videos and audio clippings back and forth for, you know, part of the peer-peer assessment process, and keep the onus off the teacher and put more and more onus on the students, because the students are actually teaching themselves when they're, you know, teaching others, you know. And so it's only going to help the students by getting them to give feedback to one another, as opposed to putting this huge onus of work on the teacher.
Cool. Joe, you want to jump in, then we'll go to another topic.
I was kind of curious. Christy mentioned she did a presentation class. I'm just kind of curious what who did presentation classes or who did presentations in their classes and what they did. I had one presentation class that's always been a nightmare because it's a Zengakubu Zengako one. So I never know how many students I'm going to get. This year I had 3. And it was online. And so I was like, okay. And one of them never showed up. So I have 2 students. It's like, okay. And fortunately, the call conference, a guy presented on Adobe Spark. And the 2 kids both had iPhones. And so I said, okay, you need to make a 20-slide Adobe Spark presentation every week. And then we're going to watch it. And I'm going to give you advice. And then we're going to be done. And that's what we did. And actually it worked out pretty well, though, you know, 2 guys, first year and a 4th year, zooming in from their homes with no shirts on. It's like, okay, dudes, come on. And so I was just kind of curious what other people did with their presentation classes.
This sounds like a good change of topic, and a lot of heads nodded when you talked about that. Charlie, you got ahead. Was that going to be about presentations, Charlie? Your thing? No. Hang on, Charlie. You just want to jump in first, then we'll come back to the presentation thing.
Oh, I was going to talk about the presentation thing. Sorry.
Oh, you were? Okay, good. All right. Well, let's make this a new topic. Well, let's keep going. I'm intending, by the way, winding up at about 12 and doing this again next week, hopefully. So if we don't get it all done today, then we'll be back. So well, Charlie, do you want to just jump in? What do you got to say about presentations?
Yeah, so it was presentations and videos, and what I found at the beginning, I'll see if you can understand what I'm doing, is I have students making videos or doing presentations like this. Can you see what's happening? No?
Very familiar. Yeah, everyone's nodding. Everyone's nodding.
Yeah, okay. I couldn't see because I was too busy reading my script. So what I got students to do is, yep, I am wearing trousers, okay. Well, you can't see my face now. That's a shame. Stand far enough back from the camera. And because obviously they're further away, so that they're going to be a little bit more difficult to hear. So then they've got to speak louder. By all means, they can hold their script, but if they're like this, it's a no-no. But like if they check and then keep going, it felt like it was a little bit more effective. But yeah, I mean, for the first half of the semester, it was just everyone just reading like this. So it just really irritated me. And I even sent them a message being like, look, I can see your eyes moving, So then they all started wearing sunglasses when they were doing their presentations. No, they didn't. But that seemed to be effective because then they had to memorize it. But then the other feedback I got was I hated memorizing everything. So, I mean, take the good with the bad.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a new digital literacy thing, right? You don't do what I'm doing right now. You got to look at this thing, and it's weird, but you got to look directly at it. So yeah, they got to learn that. How about Joe? You got something about? Was your hand still up, Joe? Sorry, I'm losing track of hands.
Wasn't.
Okay, all right. Rob Cochran.
Yeah, I've again pre-COVID-19. I used to have I had academic presentation classes, and yeah, it's just painful to watch presentations like every week. But we still did many parts of their presentation, so just the introduction. And there's the same thing we were just talking. Charlie was just showing this. Have them recorded on their computer. You don't even have to show their face. They can record the PowerPoint as a video, and I had them have to evaluate themselves. So they did self-evaluation, and they didn't like it at first because they didn't like to hear themselves. But that even just themselves evaluating, I knew the ones who really did do it, because they showed huge improvement. But just going back to the other topic as well about the peer group, I found with my classes online, by breaking them out and having them discuss this stuff, the student feedback on this is students just really get a lot more out of discussing the questions and going through textbook questions as a group and discussing the answers themselves and talking about it. They learn a lot themselves rather than me just telling them the answers. They try to remember it. They figure it out. You have different levels of students. So it's win-win for everyone, because the weaker students learn from the better students because they're explaining it. They have to break it down. And even if they're not using English, like I'm not strict on English only, as long as they're getting that learning done. And this is where we can really leverage the affordances of this kind of technologies, having students forced to work in this group and teach each other. And then you come back and we talk about the answers, and they then get that feedback. What it is.
Steve, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I was pushing my space bar. It should have worked. See, this is a Zoom thing. What you just said there about affordance, these affordances we have, that's a great word, right? And I think we're all now beyond the point where we were back in April thinking, oh my God, what the hell is this going to be like? It's how many things we've got to admit, like how many things went better? There were so many things that went, gee, I hope we don't go back to the classroom for some things, right? Of course, I want to get back there, but some things work better. Sorrel has a new voice to add to the discussion, please. Sorrel, yeah, that was a Sorrel. Sorrel, you're still muted.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
I'm WebExy, right? No, just talking about presentations. I was really, really nervous because just looking at my well, WebEx, right? We don't even have breakout rooms. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not going to work with one university. So, and the other university, I was doing asynchronous. Like, people can shout at me all they want, but that's fine. Anyway, I decided I was going to see how well my students did, and they're English majors, and I didn't know if they would really, how well they would do, but I was amazed at what they did. I did the whole thing with the PowerPoint slides like I always do. They send them to me, I read through them, give them feedback, blah 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 blah, and then I told them that I would like them to make a video, and I told them how to get the YouTube link, and so make sure it's all privacy and all this and all that and all the rest of it. And some of them did a fantastic job. I knew they'd practiced. There's no way you can talk about reading off scripts, but I was like, you know what? I realized after the first Moodle test I did that probably 80% of my class were cheating. So I decided, right, stuff that. Everyone who did the test is getting the same score. Well, they all did the test. So they're all going to get 10% of the whatever for that, and stuff it. I'm not making any more tests like that. I got fed up of people cheating, and I don't care if people think, oh, there's a better way. Couldn't work it out on WebEx and Moodle. Couldn't work it out. But with the presentations, I could definitely tell if they'd practiced. Now, yes, they could have been reading off a script, but the way they use their voice, you all know, every one of us knows, we can hear a voice that is practiced and a voice that is just like ondoku. You know, when you hear your kids just reading the book, or when they're really passionately reading the book because they remember that story because they've read it 15 times, right? It's the same thing. So I really, for next semester, I am going to be using that with my regular university too, because some of my regular university really surprised me when I gave them a choice for the end of term. They had a speaking project, and I said all they needed to send me was an audio file. I'd shown them how to do it, you know, their iPhone and Android, whatever. And then I had a wonderful surprise where one of the students decided to make his own PowerPoint with audio. He'd done it all himself first year. And I thought, you know what, if you can do it and you're not an English major, and I'm like, right, that's it. Next semester, I'm going to like raise the bar on that one. I know they can all do it. They can do it. And all they need to do is practice. And that's the one feedback. And some of the students at the uni that did this really pretty much a good job. I did comment to a few of them, it didn't sound like you practiced very much. And they wrote back and said, you're right. Thank you so much. Next time I will. And the next time they did a fantastic job. They practiced. They probably read it 10 times. What, it would have taken them, 30 minutes reading it 10 times and then do the honban. And it was beautiful. And I didn't have to see their face. I told them, you don't have to be in it. Just hearing your voice and seeing your PowerPoints, I know you've prepared. Because it's not the classroom. That idea you just gave, sorry, is it Charlie? That's fabulous. I will remember that, standing back from the mic, from the camera. But I've noticed some of my students, their rooms are tiny. Like I've noticed I'm not being rude, but and I've noticed some of them, I can see their bed in there as well. And some of them, they're right up in front of a wardrobe. And I'm like, oh gosh, I don't think I can be, some of them I can tell they're in a kitchen. And I'm not going to criticize any of that. I don't know if I can really say, sorry, can you stand back 2 meters? I think I'd rather try my YouTube idea, just for those their cat's gonna, or their dog's gonna jump into the screen and whatever, because it's happened. Anyway, that's my little bit of something that surprised me that worked. So now I'm confident. So next semester, I'm going to be doing this with even the lower level students, and just make the presentation time shorter, give lots of scaffolding, and I think they'll do a good job. Ijou.
Cool. Great. All right. Any last comment about presentations? And then we're going to change over to Todd, who's got a topic sort of ready to talk about. Any last thing to jump in about presentations? Rob, is that a hand up?
Yep. Yeah. If if you're not aware, Paul Rain has a new website, EFL dot, or now it's, I posted the link in the chat. And if you're doing speaking evaluations or speaking tasks, this is great because you set it up and students just open the link. It comes up on their phone or on their computer, one button, they talk, it records, it's done. It's quick and easy. I've used it. It's fantastic. If you're doing that kind of just audio only, quick and dirty kind of submissions, and you can do them again, do them every week, 1 or 2 minutes, talk about this. It's dead simple for students, and it's easy to access and easy to. You can download. You can either download the files or just review them in the app.
Cool. That's Teacher Tools Digital Assignments for the 21st Century, that one?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I just got the link up there. All right. Hey, Todd, Todd was one of the few who submitted that he has something that he can share. Everyone's stories are great so far. This has been really good. But Todd, please take the floor.
Thanks. Yeah. So just real quick, I'm in Beppu, so I'm close to where everybody is. It looks like most people. And yeah, I thought this was just kind of like a quick idea share. So I thought, I'll talk about PowerPoint listening activities just for a few minutes and kind of share the ones that I've made. And so real quick about the PowerPoint listening activities. Actually, I'll share my screen and show some here. Is it possible for me to share my screen?
Probably if I allow it. Hang on, let's have a look. Multiple advanced sharing options. Let me see. All participants can now share. Okay, nobody share but Todd, please. But go ahead, you should have permission now.
They're gonna Zoom bomb me.
Yeah.
feel free. Go liven things up. Okay, so here, I'll go ahead and share this here. So what happened is we do Zoom at APU. I'm at Ritsumeikan APU in Beppu, and we use OneDrive. And so I had seen on some YouTube videos, teachers using Google Slides as workbooks. And I thought, I wonder if I could do that with PowerPoint and just use it in this shared OneDrive folder. And actually, there's one huge advantage with PowerPoint over Google Slides, and that it's very easy to add audio. So we started doing these listening worksheets, like a workbook or a worksheet. Actually, I call them work slides. And they work. I was surprised how easy they were for students to do them. And so I'll give you some examples. I made 10 examples of how you could use them. And basically, teaching listening online is not easy. And what's cool about these is if you use PowerPoint, I'll open up the first example here. If you use PowerPoint to do the listening activities, it works just like a worksheet, like a PDF. What I do is I just share the document with the students, and I just slide it all in their shared OneDrive folder because we all have OneDrive. And then actually the students can play audio. Let me share my audio here. I think I can share audio. Usually you can share audio if you're the host. I don't see it here, so I don't know if you can hear it clearly. But the students can.
Todd, if you just stop sharing and then as you reshare, click the share audio button as you're.
Oh, you're right. Okay, so now hit share. And then I don't see. Yeah, it doesn't work that way, I think.
I think as you click on share, then you'd have a little click button in the bottom left-hand corner of the window, share audio.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, you're right. Cheers. Thanks a lot. Okay, cool. Now I learned something. Yeah, so here is an example. Oops. I don't know, let's see if you guys can hear it now. What do you want to eat for dinner? Can you guys hear that?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, yeah. So how it works with the PowerPoint activities is you can just drag and drop a short audio clip, and I just use Audacity or another audio program. And then there's all these different little tasks that they can do. Like for this one, the stress, what the students do is like they would have to move the word up or below the line. And actually, that's not looking very good there. I don't know why, what happened with this one. Maybe I don't know what happened with this one. Let's turn it around. Okay, so the student would play the audio. What do you want to eat for dinner? And then simple tasks, they have to move it up or down if it's stressed. So that's task number one. And you would share these with the students and they could just download it, or they could actually, if they have OneDrive, they can do it in OneDrive. That's kind of one of the more boring ones, but the nice ones were, let me go ahead and pull this back up here. So the dictation one, if I can find that, yeah, this one. So you can make them like puzzle based. So you can take a conversation, and then what I do is, this is just a simple conversation, and I chop it up, and each one has one line. And so they would play the audio here.
Oh, I love that course. I tried it last week.
And then they would have to try to dictate it, right? And I put them in breakout rooms, and there's nothing for them to read, and they play, and then in the breakout rooms, they have to share what they think it is, and they type it in, and then they would go to the next one and hear what she has to say, and then they would dictate it as a team, and then put it in there.
I didn't know you played golf.
And then when it's finally done, it's a listening puzzle. They have to put all the slides in order to make the conversation. So it's kind of an interactive way to do a dictation. And it works really well if they do it in teams. And so they're helping each other in breakout rooms, exactly what did the person say, and then typing it up. And the cool thing is, if you have OneDrive, you could actually watch them in OneDrive and see if they're progressing. So I can look at their activity and see if they're doing the slide. But here's the one that I think is I like the most, and that is the students will have a longer listening. You can get a TED Talk. We use a book called Lecture Ready, and the lectures are long. They're like 9 minutes long. And so what we do is we have the students listen, and they have to move these little boxes in the grid for the timestamp. So this would be 1 minute, 1 second, 1 minute, 21 seconds, 1 minute, 41 seconds. And they would have to slide them in the correct order. Now this is the answer sheet, but here is the blank. Yes, I hope it's the blank. Let's hope that's not I've already done the answers. Yeah, okay. So they would just click on this link here. It's really easy to get started. So they would just go ahead and open this up. If I can get that to open here. Where's open link? Hyperlink, there it is. So the students quickly can go straight to the listening activity. There's no mussing around. And then here it is. This is from the book Lecture Ready, and a teacher luckily put these up on YouTube. But you can do this with any TED Talk or anything. And then they play it.
Good morning, everyone. Ready to get started? Okay, good. Our topic today is diet and health. Today we'll discuss the reasons people choose the food they eat. And what I mean is, maybe they choose for nutrition, that is, getting the right type of food for good health and growth, or maybe they choose for pleasure, meaning they choose food because it tastes.
So then the students would stop, and then they would have to move the card into the right spot. And so usually what I do is I have the students do this on their own, and then they get back together. You put them in breakout rooms, and they check if they have the right answers. And this is kind of nice because you can do, it's not your typical it's not your typical, what is the answer, fill in the, the multiple choice type thing, or even like a gap fill. You can have little bits of language, kind of meta language or transitional phrases. You can have keywords, and they just got to listen and put it in the right spot. And they could also do it for homework. The next day they come to class, and then they would do this in a group and check their answers. So I don't want to talk too long here, but I've shared a link of the 10. I've created a folder of the 10 that I've made, and you guys can download them and kind of just see how they work. I want to go ahead and grab this. Unfortunately, my university, oddly enough, I have to share this on Google Drive because my university does not allow us to share anything outside of our little network. So I have to share this in Google Drive, and I'll do that in just a second here. So you can see them all here. You can download them. Now there's another activity that I thought I would just talk about real quick. Again, I thought this was just 10 minutes, so I'm just gonna just share a couple activities real fast. And that is, you could also do hot potatoes. I don't know if you remember going way back to hot potatoes, but the hot potatoes are really easy HTML activities, and you can share these and then put students in breakout rooms, and they have to work on these puzzles together. Like here's a very basic crossword, and like they would click here too, and they would have to say, okay, what's the word blank value? Now we teach this collocation, so then the students would type it in, right? And then they could enter it, and that's it. So you could do this in groups. We do a lot of hot potatoes in groups. There's gap fills as well. If they're stuck, they can click this, they get a hint, and these take just seconds to make, and I can share videos showing you how to make these. Now the thing about the hot potatoes is you have to do them on a PC. So if you have a Mac, sorry. Of course, they'll render on anything because they're HTML, but these are a lot of fun in the breakout room. So basically you can have that textbook type task, but what's really nice about these activities is the students really talk trying to figure out the puzzles together, either the listening puzzles or the hot potato puzzles. And another one that they like is this one. Well, there's two. There's this one here, the word gap. So they could, like for grammar, you just remove a word and they have to try to figure out what's the missing word. They could hit hint if they need like the first word, and they kind of just read and work on it together. And another one is the word jumble. And here they have to try to put a sentence together, right? So they, again, they work best in breakout rooms. They click on a word, and then they have to try to piece the sentence together, and then they can check. So that's pretty much it. So I only got 10 minutes, but I do have training videos showing you how to do this. And after I get out of here, I will put those in the description box. But the one thing that I was really shocked with, honestly, was those PowerPoint listening activities. It's really weird because a lot of times, like, we have this technology that we don't know that it's perfectly suited for something, even though that's not what it's designed for. Like Twitter was actually created to help people find out when the taco truck was downstairs. Everybody knows that Facebook was started as a dating app, and PowerPoint, nobody ever would have thought was like this perfect little tool to do listening activities. But as you'll see in the 10 examples, there's loads. And that's it. If there's any questions, I'm happy to ask.
That's great. A lot of questions were coming up in the chat. So the people who asked the questions in the chat, do you want to read them? Do you want to give them again?
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't watching. Sorry.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I wasn't either, but I saw them coming up. So go ahead, somebody throw some questions to Todd.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
I just commented that I could just see my students who are, have a tenuous grasp of the software. They'd just be like deleting slides, or, like you yourself did, you turned a word upside down, and I could just see that happening to my students. They're like, Sensei, we don't know how to do this.
Yeah, I think actually a lot of it, I think, was just because I was moving stuff around. Actually, I didn't have a problem. And it's one thing that's really nice is I have a shared folder in OneDrive, and because you do first the demo together, and then actually that's what's great about the breakout rooms, because they actually have to discuss. If somebody can't do it, the other person will explain. And also, I forgot to mention, in the breakout rooms, one student has to share the screen. That's the key. That really drives the communication between them. One student shares the screen, and then they all talk together to solve the problem. But I did it a lot, actually, and I never found that it was a problem. It could be that the students were all relatively proficient in PowerPoint, because we do that a lot at my university. But yeah, it wasn't an issue. And another thing also real quick about those PowerPoint activities is they're so easy to replicate and make. Oh my gosh, so if you make one, and then you can make another and another and another, you just copy the slide and just change the words and change the audio. They take seconds to make. Bill, yes, it's still University of Victoria, and they're still kindly leaving that link up there. And maybe you can find that and put that in the, if you just hit download hot potatoes, it'll come up. It's still there and it's still free. Actually, it's freer than it used to be. These days, you don't have to sign a form saying that you're not going to use it for commercial purposes or anything. It's just free.
Remember buying the CD of it and getting
Right.
not the DVD, the CD in the mail.
Yeah. Now it's just a generous link they leave there. So it's nice. So yeah, so they must all be using computers. Yes. So oddly enough, you can play the audio on a mobile device, but yeah, exactly. They need PowerPoint. But you can actually do it online on a computer. You don't have to download it. It's easier if the students download it. And also you can just upload a file, like I'll do one right here. So a lot of times you can just share a file really quickly with your students in the chat. So I'll try to choose one that's not too heavy. The word order one's good. Ooh, maybe that's too big. I don't know if it'll take 1.5. But this one, they would listen to the file and then they would have to put it in the right order. So a lot of times I'll just upload the PowerPoint and then they just download it and you're good to go. You said hot potatoes, it can be used on a Mac, you can't create it. There's no author file. Yeah, you have to have a Windows OS, sorry. Oh, and then, yeah, so I didn't talk about Nearpod, but I was gonna bring it up because somebody mentioned, if I can share my screen one more time, somebody mentioned using Reading Explorer, and here is what I did in Nearpod, if I can find it here. Yeah, so Nearpod is great for reading activities. And so we did one.
Just basically, what is Nearpod I have never heard of it before.
What it is, it's interactive slides. So I'll pull one up here real fast. You can see a live participation. So you would get the students' information. They put it in they put it in the link. They put in the code like you do for quizzes, whatever. So like you would get this one right here. And then probably it's not gonna let me start. It's gonna let me start. And then you can do the slides. And then you have all these, oh, you can't see it, sorry, but you can do all these activities, like you can read, you can have the audio play, I don't have it here. And then the student could take a quiz. And actually the best person to talk about this is Catherine, because she saw the presentation and then she did it. And I'll get the link to share Nearpod, but it's really good for teaching reading. Actually, Catherine, if she's still here, yeah. Hey, Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine, can you add to that? Microphone's off, Catherine. Catherine, you're muted. Catherine. Oh, okay.
This happens to all of us, doesn't it? Yeah, I don't teach reading, but I have, after Todd demoed Nearpod, it definitely transformed my, as I said, 90-minute Zoom lessons that I was doing. And for the audio, Nearpod does have an activity where I just would record my own voice, and I had the students in breakout rooms as a dictogloss type activity. And then they would have to work together and then just, yeah, they selected their leader and one person would type out what they had heard. So yeah, I am the lowest of the low tech people, the lowest. And I found Nearpod to be super easy to get going with, to create interactive slides. My students loved it. Flipgrid was mentioned earlier. Flipgrid and Nearpod integrate really well. So I just integrate the link to the Flipgrid. As I said, my students at the end of class have to write a reflection. They were, used to write a reflection card, but now I have them recording their reflection on Flipgrid as a video. And then I don't have to grade that or respond. I just, at the beginning of the next class, I respond collectively to their sort of comments or thoughts or ideas or troubles that they posted about in Flipgrid. So, but
cool. And anybody else on this topic? Flipgrid, we're kind of broadening things out here, but that's fine. Anybody else?
Fine. And so I'm just so sorry. I'm gonna have to go. I'm still teaching, and
wow.
So I have September 7th with this awful university.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, please come back next. We're going to do this again next week. It sounds like you've got a lot to share, Catherine. So please do come again.
Okay.
Keep an eye up on the. Yes. I'd like to hear more. I'd like to hear about Flipgrid too, because I started using Flipgrid and didn't really maximize its potential. But anyway, if you have, I'd like to hear about it.
All right. Awesome. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Please,
thanks, Todd.
Okay. Cool.
Thank you for having me.
And Charlie has a hand up.
Yeah, just on the subject of like different apps and stuff. Obviously, I said earlier that there wasn't enough time to focus on each individual student, and there never is anyway, even if we're in the classroom. But yeah, one of the other things they said is like I was using Quizlet for vocab. So, I mean, I think most people have heard of that, and that's obviously like a really good way of getting them to practice in their own time if they want. Which, if they want to, that's fine. I didn't do tests. But then, yeah, they started saying about pronunciation and how they'll want to be practicing. They want my feedback on that. And obviously that's something that only a teacher can really give you until I found this app, which is quite good. I can't open the app on my computer because it's a mobile only app. But it's called Elsa Speak. And it's a free app. You can sign up and you can get like some sort of like extra training for money, but it's not worth it. But I'll try and show you what it's got. So like this is the screen here. And it's all in, you can put it in Japanese, so it'll be even easier for them to understand. And then it's got this Jisho function here. And then basically you type in a phrase. So, you know, I mean, this is nothing revolutionary, but so, you know, I just typed in a word that might be slightly difficult for them to pronounce. And then you can check the pronunciation. So it reads it for you. It comes up with this. And then when you press physical, it says physical. But then when you can record your own voice, physical. And it gives you a score out of 100 for how good your pronunciation is, which is pretty good. I'm only 98%, unfortunately, despite being a native speaking English person. But yeah, I mean, it's something that if they're really interested, then it's one part of the app. There's loads of other parts, but it was the best one that I could find. Like a lot of other ones were all like, you know, paid to do anything. So if the students are interested in improving their pronunciation, then I recommend they use that. So that's called Elsa Speak, and you can find it on the App Store or Android, whatever Android thing's called. Anyway, that was it. Just I thought that was useful. So
cool. Rob, go ahead.
Yeah.
Actually,
even
before I do, hang on a minute. But just while through all that, I think it was focusing on Todd, right? And then I went and manually clicked on to Charlie, and I went to Charlie. I'm just learning Zoom still. Yeah, I'm way behind everybody else. Was that what everybody else saw? It was stuck on Todd. The camera was stuck on Todd. Is that what other people saw? Yeah. Okay. And then it went to Charlie because I clicked on that manually. I shouldn't have to do that, right? Any idea how to sort of?
Catherine, I couldn't see Catherine either.
Sorry, I spotlighted him when he was starting to present. I think I didn't unspotlight.
Okay. Right. Okay. Blame the co-host. There they are. That's a strategy.
Yep.
Blame the co-host. Yeah. All right.
I'm not even going to show my face in shame.
All right. Back to Rob. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't want students to download a specific app, just Siri itself is hilarious for doing these speaking activities. And pre-COVID, I've done this in class where you give them sentences and you have them in groups and they have to try and say the sentences into Siri. You get them to switch over their language to English and then they say it. And some of the stuff, this is actually just something for fun because you basically have students like rolling on the floor laughing because what Siri hears and what they say, I sometimes was almost crying at the sentences that Siri hears them say, and students coming up and say, Sensei, my phone, Siri's broken. It doesn't hear the sentence, and I say it and it comes up perfectly. They say, no, Siri's not broken. But Siri itself is just something that's quick and easy to do, which can check the pronunciation, because again, the text will come up with what they're supposed to be saying, and they can then adjust and do it a lot of times and get that feedback of what Siri's hearing and what they're actually saying.
Cool. Well, 10 minutes left. I think we've got an open floor. It's come down to 21 of us now. So jump in, anybody, any topic, when we'll wind up at about 12.
I had asked a question about using lo.org in class, and I've toyed around with it several years ago and compared it to English Central. But has anybody been using that for speaking?
Oh, it's Todd's baby, right?
Oh,
that's Todd. That's Todd there.
Oh, okay. Oh, thanks, Todd.
Man, yeah. Thank you. Just real quick though, the site is a little bit different. Like it's just we just throw up the interviews, so it's not professional or polished like the other sites.
Mm-hmm. But it gives a wide range of accents and voices and topics. So I've been having difficulties doing conversations. My textbook is English firsthand, and it really doesn't lend itself well to online learning, even though Steve Brown is my boss. So I'm looking at your site, Todd, to supplement it to get speaking activities.
Oh, thanks a lot. There's actually, we have all the animations now too. So we have like the textbook, like the free type textbook. So the animations are actually on another site called Sound Grammar, but the book is on Elo. The book's also on Sound Grammar, but I'll share the link with you if you want. It's free.
That's great.
Thanks. And actually, you should be on the site. Anybody want to be on the site? Please be on the site. I always need speakers. So please, you get paid too.
Okay.
Todd, actually, how could we use Elo for remote learning? Well, what's the short answer to that question? Like, how can we incorporate that into what we're doing?
God, that's a good question. I mean, you could do. I like that PowerPoint game I just did. I think it's always been designed for self-study, to be honest. So, or unless you had a worksheet or something, the students would do. You can play it cold, like just, choose an article and then you play it and stop and then just ask questions as you go. But I'll be honest, I haven't really designed it for in-class online learning. But one thing that some teachers use is they use Kami. Kami, by the way, is a great app for, even if you're not for anything. But Kami is you could share a PDF and the students can draw on the PDF, type on the PDF, do all these things on it. And then so you could have a worksheet and they could listen to the audio from any website actually. And if you have a worksheet, they can mark it online, draw or whatever. So you could use the worksheets from Elo for that, and they're free.
Right. Yeah, a lot of what I'm hearing today, just my own reflection here, we're talking about having Zoom open and having something else open and having something else open. I don't know if my students would be able to handle that. I've got two monitors here and an iPhone set up at once and an iPad right here. So I'm kind of used to doing that. But are people finding that their students can handle having 2 or 3 apps and windows going at once? Charlie's got a big butts there. And Sorrel's shaking her head. Yeah, okay. Because there's so many things like this. Hey, everybody, open up the PDF. I mean, actually, I did a survey. I asked, there was one point where I was giving video feedback. So I would send them a link to a video on Google Drive while they would read through their essay, of me reading through their essay. Long story, I won't bother you with. But in my survey follow-up to that, I said, is it a pain to have to go back and forth between windows? And they said, no, it's not at all. Nobody said it was a problem. But yeah, there's just so many things we could do if we knew that they could do this and they could do this and they could do this at the same time. That'd be unreal. Anyway, I'm taking the floor. Go, Rob, you got a hand up again.
Yeah, just about what you were saying is like, yeah, the thing is, students believe, they believe they can't do it. And again, culturally, they're just acclimatized to having this teacher do everything. And they're going to say that they want more support from the teacher. They're seeking indulgence. And that's just, again, a cultural, it's their educational background. They're always going to say, I can't need it. I need the teacher to explain more. We have to understand that's going to be their natural reaction. However, with just scaffolding, give them things to do. If you challenge them, they will rise to the challenge. With the caveat that there are going to be 15%, generally works out to be about 15% of your students that just will not do it at all, right? However, though, the other students, if you provide them with just scaffolding and support, break everything down into steps, give them a little explanation and make them do it, they rise to the challenge. I mean, I'm pushing my students all the time and I barely give a lot of explanation, but I make them do it. And you know what? They do it. And again, keep notes of the ones that are really struggling or can't do it and check in with them. Check in to make sure they understand, they don't have technical issues, and that they can do it. And you'll find that some do have issues where you have to just give them a little bit extra time, but the other ones, they can do it, they just don't want to. But check in with them, but they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. We can't, and this word just gets stuck in, we can't motivate students. Students are going to do stuff or they're not going to do it. We can't change their minds. But we can introduce them to new stuff. And so many of them rise to the challenge because they've been stifled for 12 years of school. And you'll be surprised at what you can get students to do if you just kind of show them, give them a few steps. And the key is breaking this technical stuff down into steps. And once they have that, a lot of them are going to rise up. And as we said, working in groups, there's going to be that one kid who's got it down pat, and they're the one sharing. And I've given my students tasks and moved around to the groups, and whoa, like I go in and they've got, somebody is sharing stuff and they're all discussing it. And I didn't tell them to do it. They just figured out how to do it on their own. So we're going to be surprised at how much students can do, but we do have to keep in mind that we may have to just walk it back and just break stuff down into steps.
Yeah. Anyone else? Open floor.
On the overload of so many apps, what some of my students are starting to do, and I'm going to start maybe encouraging it, on their smartphone, they have Zoom, and then they have their computer in front of them. And that frees up the real estate on their screen to do any tasks. And so they don't have to fiddle around with the Zoom. It's on their camera. They just put it in one place, and then they can do the work on the screen, on the computer.
Well, shall we wind up?
Yeah. What's next week's schedule look like?
Well, I was gonna, hey, I'm the guy who's still learning Zoom, but there's a thing called polling down there. I was about to sort of go and reach for that and see what everybody's best days were for next week.
It might not work unless you turned it on before you started the Zoom.
Say that again, Bill?
Polling might not work unless you turned on. Well, try it. See if you can add a new question.
Yeah. All right. I'll try. Oh, hang on. Geez, I clicked on that and it opened up in a Zoom in a browser. Next week. Yeah, hopefully this is useful for everybody. Next week. What day is best next week?
We can hear you. You could just say that.
Yeah. Hang on. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Let's just see if this works. Here we go. Save. Okay, this is happening in a browser, by the way.
Right.
And now I'll come. It looks like it's saved. So now I'll come back to the thing here. Yeah, here we go. Launch poll. Here we go. It should be launching to you right now. In progress. Attendees are now viewing the question. Here they come. Okay, what day is best next week? Oh, good. Yep, and responses are coming in.
As a co-host, I can't vote.
Right. And actually, David, we've got a meeting next week. Is that next week, David? Is that next week? We got Wednesday, I think.
can only vote
it's
for
on
one.
my calendar.
Yeah,
But,
I was planning to try to have a meeting on Wednesday next week.
Yeah,
for
right.
feedback.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Wednesday's very
Steve-
unpopular here, so that's good. That's a Fukuoka meeting.
I can only,
vote for one.
Could you offer more than one option?
Oh, no.
Yeah,
For multiple options.
you could have when you started. There's like it says multiple choice, and in Zoom talk, multiple choice means we can choose more than one.
Okay. Well, can everybody see the results? That's
No,
the question.
not till you have to end the poll and then show the results.
All right. Well, 16 have voted, so that must mean plus you and me, Bill. Means everybody. So here's end poll, share results. What are people seeing now? Are you seeing
Thursday?
That?
We see
Yeah,
Thursday.
Winner.
40%.
Well,
I voted for Tuesday, but Thursday will work for me also.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. I'd like to do a different day. I'd rather not do it on a Tuesday because people who are not here today possibly can't do every Tuesday. So
Thursday is my second choice.
Yeah.
Equally
Oh, well,
good.
Thursday
Equally.
looks pretty good then. Yeah. Okay. Same time. I think mornings generally better, right? Yeah, I think the same time's better.
Don't you get tired? I mean, during the day after drinking so much from 10 till 12?
All right. Well, on that note, let's go have a drink. No, I've got to go and hang out with kids now.
Yeah.
That's what'll wear me out. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. That was cool.
Was
that
10
was good.
o'clock,
And
10 o'clock's good for everybody?
yeah, I reckon. Yeah. So I'll publicize again on Facebook and everything as usual. I won't bother with a program, so to speak. Bill had his piece. Todd had his. I didn't get to mine, but I can do that next week. No rush. And it's not a biggie anyway. But I think just an open floor thing is working fine. We're all polite and civil enough to kind of give each other the floor and what have you without any need for scheduling or anything like that. So I think that's what we'll do. So let's wind it up.